Welcome everyone to this live podcast on Twitch where you can find the news from the research industry that how our researchers keep on researching on various topics and domains to keep our lifestyle better and useful of course. And yes, this article posted on our website named postscientist.com. So if you are willing to check it out, please check it out. Otherwise, listening to this podcast will be enough for you guys as it acts like an archive on the daily basis, providing you the information from the research industry. So without wasting any further time, let's get started with the first topic of the day. Study sheds more light on the star formation history and structure of IC 1396. It's gonna be a, of course, astronomy topic. So most of the astronomer will relate to this, and it's the finding between the given by our international team of astronomers on the IC 3096 cluster of stars. So of course, using various telescopes. Using various telescopes, an international team of astronomers has investigated IC 3096, a nearby region of ionized atomic hydrogen. The result of the study, published October 21st on arxiv.org, yield important insights regarding the star formation history and structure of this region. Star forming regions are essential for astronomers to better understand the process of star formation and stellar evolution. Observation of such regions have the potential to expand the list of known stars, protostars, young stellar objects, and clumps, which could then be studied comprehensively in various wavelengths in order to get more insight into the initial stage of the stellar life cycle. Located most likely between 2830 and 3080 light years away in the star forming Cepheus bubble, IC 3096 is an HLI star forming region as it contains clouds of ionized atomic hydrogen. The region has a rather simple structure and is powered by the multiple O star system HD 262-67 residing near the geometrical center of IC 1396 in the young cluster Trumbler 37. Previous observation of IC 1396 have found that it also contains some bright rimmed clouds BRC shaped by the ultraviolet radiation from HD 206 to 267. These clouds present evidence of ongoing star formation and are perceived by astronomers as excellent laboratories for studying young stars in different evolutionary stages. Therefore, a group of researchers led by Mara E. Paleo Belendro of the Autonomous University of Madrid in Spain inspected IC 3096 and its BRC using multi-wavelength data from various instruments. We use ground-based spectroscopic photometry and Gaia ED-R3 data to study star formation in IC 3096. We obtained near-infrared broad and narrow-band imaging to study the star-cloud interaction and optical spectra to confirm and classify objects that were young star candidates, the astronomer wrote in the paper. The study found that the IC 3096 region contains four independent subclusters designated A, B, EF significantly different in forward motion but not in parallax. Thus, finding together the spatial distribution of member stars suggests a complex, varied, and varied star formation process in IC 1396. Further investigation of the four subcluster found that they differed also in age. It turned out that the population in the outskirts of subcluster B and E are older on average than those in the subcluster A. Okay. The study also determined that the distance to IC 1396 is approximately 3015 light years and identified 334 new members of this region. The colored magnitude diagram indicates that most of these new members are intermediate to solar mass stars. The mean age of IC 1396 was estimated to be about 4 million years. Summing up the result, the author of the paper underlined that they altogether point to a multi episodic star formation process in IC 1396. The kinematics age and evolutionary state difference in group of sources within the same cloud suggests that IC 1396 has suffered more than one star formation episode over time from various mechanisms, although radical velocity differences mean that triggering is not obvious. They concluded. So, these are the findings, these are the study given by our astronomers on the cluster of stars, especially IC 1396. So, who are interested in that stars formations will able to understand it more better by this article, of course. We are moving towards the next topic. Moving on towards next topic. New cellular protective mechanism discovered. Okay, let's see. A vast number of biological reactions occurred inside cells, generating various byproducts. Some of these can be highly reactive molecules, and if they build up inside cells, they can cause stress and damage. One class of this molecule, reactive sulfur species (RSS), are known to play a biological function, but it was unknown how cells respond to an accumulation of RSS. Now, researchers have described a system by which excess RSS, reactive sulfur species, can be actively transported out of cells. So, these is the, I mean, it's not an organization, it's the, of course, reactive sulfur species which we are talking about, because it's being related to the Indian RSS. So, yep, never mind. Please refer to this only, not the organization, of course. Chemical reaction constantly occurred in cells, including two opposing reactions known as oxidation and reduction, and so it is the key that this balance, known as redox homeostasis, is maintained for health of cells. RSS have been shown to act as antioxidants to protect against oxidative stress and maintain redox homeostasis, but an excess of RSS can also lead to sulfur stress. Of course, man. By creating a strain of moist that generated excessive RSS, the team were able to assure that the level of RSS rose in the extracellular space but not inside the cell, suggesting an active mechanism to transport RSS out of cells. The strict regulation of the cellular level of RSS that we observed suggests the preserve of an adaptive cellular mechanism controlling the RSS levels, which most likely exists to protect against sulfur stress, explains senior author Professor Yoshito Komagai. Transporter proteins are responsible for moving molecules out of cells. The team found that an amino acid called cysteine was key in the export of RSS, suggesting that a particular transporter called SLC7A11 is involved in the transport of RSS. SLC7A11 is known to bring cysteine into the cell while pumping another amino acid called glutamate out. As cysteine is a sulfur containing molecule, it was surprising finding that SLC7A11 both imports cysteine and exports RSS. Okay, great man. Sulfur stress caused by high level of RSS can lead to cell death. Okay. This is thought to be involved in a variety of human health conditions, including disease of the heart, cardiomyopathy, and muscular dystrophy. Therefore, the surprising and significant result of this study will open new and previously unconsidered avenues for research into sulfur stress and related diseases. The study was published in Redox Biology. Okay, great man, great. So it's being useful in in various diseases, of course, to protect the life of the patient, of course, right? More likely in the neuroscience topic. So yeah, moving on towards next topic. ESO captures the ghost of a giant star. It's an uh, astronomy article. So let's see what we get in our universe through this findings or through this discovery of astronomers. A spooky spider web, magical dragons, or whipsy trail of ghosts. What do you see in this image of the Vela supernova remnant? This beautiful tapestry of colors shows the ghostly remains of a gigantic star and was captured here in an incredible detail with the VLT survey telescope hosted at the European Southern Observatory ESO Paddle site in Chile. The wave structure of pink and orange clouds is all that remains of a massive star that ended its life in a powerful explosion around 11,000 years ago. When the most massive stars reach the end of their life, they often go out with a bang as an outburst called a supernova. These explosions cause shock waves that move through the surrounding gas, compressing it and creating intricate thread-like structures. The energy release heats the gaseous tendrils, making them shine brightly as seen in this image. In this 554 million pixel image, we get an extremely detailed view of the Vela supernova remnant named after the southern constellation Vela. The sails you could fit 9 full moons in this entire image, and the whole cloud is even larger. At only 100 light years away from the Earth, this dramatic supernova remnant is one of the closest known to us. As it exploded, the outermost layer of the progenitor star was ejected into the surrounding gas, producing the spectacular filament that we observe here. What remains of the star is an ultra dense ball in which the protons and electrons are pushed together into neutrons or neutron star. The neutron star in the Vela remnant, placed slightly outside of the image to the upper left, happens to be the pulsar that spins on its own axis at an incredible speed of more than 10 times per second. This image is a mosaic of observation taken with the wide field camera Omega Cam at the VLT Survey Telescope VST hosted at ESO Paddle Observatory in Chile. The 268 million pixel camera can take images through silver filter that let through light of different colors. In this particular image of the Vela remnant, Four different filters were used, represented here by a combination of magenta, blue, green, and red. The VST is owned by the National Institute of Astrophysics in Italy. INAF and with its 2.6 meter mirror, it is one of the largest telescopes dedicated to surveying the night sky is visible light. Invisible light, of course. The image is an example of four from such a survey. The WHT photometric H alpha survey of the southern galactic plane and bulge WPHAS for more than 7 years. The survey has mapped a considerable portion of our human galaxy, of our home galaxy, sorry, allowing astronomers to better understand how stars form, evolve, and eventually die. Sorry. So these are the study uh, on the star of cluster, gigantic star, formation of star, of course. So great, man. Uh, bas, I mean, I don't have any words because it's just a finding and it's just a discovery providing you, or like a news providing by us. So yep. Moving on towards next topic. Vegetation regulates energy exchange in the Arctic. Okay. Global warming is changing the Arctic by causing permafrost thaw, glacier melt, droughts, fires, and changes in vegetation. These developments are strongly linked to the energy exchange between land and the atmosphere. Research at the University of Zurich have now shown that different plant communities in the tundra play a key role in this energy exchange but are not taken into account in climate models. The heat waves that swept across Europe this summer made many people realize how important plants are when it comes to cooling down the environment. But how do the various types of vegetation in the Arctic affect the energy exchange between Earth's surfaces and its atmosphere? This is highly relevant question since the region has great significance for the climate change. The Arctic is warming up at more than twice the rate of the global average, leading to thawing permafrost and melting glacier regionally. Globally, this warming is reflected in consequences far away from the Arctic, for example, in cold damage in ecosystem in East Asia. Moving on towards next topic, similar heat flux differences as between glacier and grassland. An international team led by two researchers from the Department of Evolutionary Biology and Environmental Studies of the University of Zurich WZH have has now taken a closer look at the energy budget of the land surface in the Arctic. According to their study, the Arctic diverse vegetation, which is discredited in climate models, is one of the key factors in the energy exchange between the energy land surface and the atmosphere. Remarkably, in summer, the difference in heat flux between two types of vegetation, such as a landscape dominated by lichens and mosses, and one with shrubs, is about the same as between the surface of glacier and green grasslands, says postdoc Jacqueline Orick, first author of the study. Vegetation types linked to data from 64 measuring stations. Arctic vegetation is highly diverse and ranges from dry grasslands and wetlands to scrubland, dominated by dwarf shrubs as well as barrens with mosses and lichens. The researcher linked this vegetation diversity to all available energy exchange data collected by 64 measuring stations in the Arctic between 1994 and 2021. Their focus was on the summer months between June and August, during which sunlight and thus energy observation is particularly high, depending on the type of vegetation, either the surface or the air are warmed to varying degrees. In addition, with increasing shrub density, land warms up earlier after winter. The shrub dark branches emerge from under the snow early, absorb sunlight and pass it on to the surface long before the snow melts away, explained Ori. Cooling vegetation can preserve permafrost in the tundra. Okay. Our findings on the energy flows in the Arctic are extremely relevant since the preservation of permafrost depends to a large extent on the heat flux into the ground, says user ZH Professor Gabriel Spaceman Strupp. The study data make it possible to incorporate the effects of different plant communities and their distribution into climate predictions. Researchers can thus use improved climate models to calculate weather and to which extent tundra vegetation in the Arctic plays a role in cooling the land surface. Precision model required additional measuring station. Okay. We now know what plant communities have a particular pronounced cooling or warming effect through energy exchange. This enables us to determine how changes in plant communities, which are occurring in many regions in the Arctic, are affecting permafrost and the climate, says Skenchman Strupp. This required improvement in data collection in particular. Although the Arctic is changing rapidly and has a major impact on the climate dynamics of the entire planet, there are only few reliable measuring stations in this region. In addition to calling for current stations to remain in operation, the study author believe now new stations are needed in those Arctic landscape types that could only be partially analyzed due to incomplete data. So, these are the energy exchange provided by our researchers, of course. Uh, that's right. That how it's we can define the or regulates the energy exchange in the uh, Arctic region. Of course, everyone is trying to get the energy source uh, to fulfill their energy requirement in their country. So, I mean, uh, it's the requirement, it's the solution. So, great, man, great. It's going, of course, it's being provided on by the governments or cluster of governments. So, yep. Moving on to our next topic. Just like humans, more intelligent jays have greater self control. Okay. A study has found that Eurasian jays can pass a version of the marshmallow test, and those with the greater self control also score the highest on intelligence test. This is the first evidence of a link between self control and intelligence in birds. Self control, the ability to resist temptation in favor of a better but delayed reward, is a vital skill that underpins effective decision making and future planning. Jays are members of the COVID family, often nicknamed the featured apes because they rival non human primates in the cognitive abilities, could hide or cache their food to save it for later. In other words, the need to delay immediate gratification to plan for further meals. The researchers think this may have driven the evolution of self control in these birds. Self control has been previously shown to be linked to intelligence in human chimpanzees and an earlier study of by the researchers in cuttlefish. The greater the intelligence, the greater the self control. The new result shows that the link between intelligence and self control exists across distantly related animal groups, suggesting it has evolved independently several times. Of all the corvids, jays in particular are vulnerable to having their cache stolen by other birds. Self control also enables them to wait for the right moment to hide their food without being seen or heard. The results are published today in the journal Physio- Physiophical transaction of the Royal Society be. To the test, the self-control of the 10 Eurasian jays, Carlos Glandreas, researcher designed an experiment inspired by the 1972 Stanford marshmallow test, in which children were offered a choice between one marshmallow immediately or two if they waited for a period of time. Instead of marshmallows, the jays are presented with the mealworms, bread, and cheese. Mealworms are a common favorite. Bread and cheese come second, but individually vary in their preference for one over the other. The birds had to choose between the bread or cheese available immediately and mealworm that would that they could see but could only get to after a delay when a perspex screen was raised. Could they delay immediate gratification and wait for their favorite food? Okay. A range of delayed times was tested from 5 seconds to 5.5 minutes before the mealworm was made available. If the bird had resisted the temptation to eat the bread or cheese, all the birds in the experiment managed to wait for the worm, but some could wait much longer than others. Top of the class was J-Lo, who ignored a piece of cheese and waited 5.5 minutes for a mealworm. The worst performer, Dulcie and Homer, could only wait a maximum of 20 seconds. It's just mind-blogging that some jaws can wait so long for the favorite food. In multiple trials, I sat there watching Jello ignore a piece of cheese for over 5 minutes. I was getting bored, but she was just patiently waiting for the worm, said Dr. Alex Sensational at the University of Cambridge Department of Psychology, first author of the report. The jays looked away from the bread or cheese when it was presented to them, as if to distract themselves from temptation. Similar behavior has been seen in chimpanzees and children. The researcher also presented the jays with 5 cognitive tasks that are commonly used to measure general intelligence. The birds that performed better in their tasks in these tasks also managed to wait longer for the mealworm reward. This suggests that self-control is linked with intelligence in jays. The bird's performance varied across individuals. Some did really well in all the tasks, and others were mediocre. What was most interesting was that if a bird was good at one of the tasks, it was good at all of them, which suggests that a general intelligence factor underlies their performance, said Chanel. The jays also adjusted the self-control behavior according to the circumstances. In another experiment where the worm was visible but always out of reach, the jays always ate the immediately available bread or cheese, and the length of time they were willing to wait for the worm fell if it was pitted against their second and most preferred food as the immediate treat. Compared to their third, this flexibility shows that jays only delay gratification when it is warranted. Research by other scientists has found that children taking the Stanford marshmallow test vary greatly in the self-control, and this ability is linked to their general intelligence. Children that can resist temptations for longer also get higher scores in a range of academic tasks. So, these are the study given by our scientists, of course. Just like humans, the jays are great self-control on itself. So, yep, great man. I mean, of course, it's being used in various biological advances and everything. So, yeah. Moving on towards the next topic. Newly designed molecule could help treat deadly lung condition. Okay. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis (IPF) is a deadly condition. The only available therapies can slow disease progression, but they are not a cure and often cause intolerable side effects. Patients diagnosed with the disease will die within 3 to 5 years of diagnosis. It is more lethal than most cancers, says Naftali Kemisi, MD, Bernardingood, England, Pharmaceutical Incorporation, endowed professor of medicine, pulmonary at Yale School of Medicine. A team led by Kaminsky used a newly designed molecule called MRG229 with potential therapeutic implications for IPF. The study is one of the first to use microRNA mimic as a viable therapeutic in the lungs. The group published its finding October 17 in eBiomedicines. I feel so lucky to have it contributed to this work because it could lead to a treatment for such a devastating disease, says Monsieur Chisholli, PhD instructor at Yale School of Medicine and first author. I got to touch with many hands something that could be good or that could be a big hope for many people. MicroRNA molecule MIR29 is linked to fibrosis. Patients suffering from IPF experience scarring in lung tissue that can cause difficulty breathing. Nearly a decade ago, chemistry team discovered that the accumulation of scarred tissue in the lungs were linked to a decrease in a microRNA molecule called MIR29. Other studies documented that scarring in other organs was also related to a decline in this microRNA. This sparked the team interest in creating a MIR29 molecule that could be given to patients with the goal of reversing this scaring. In 2014, chemistry team published its work on first generation MIR29 mimic Remelance MRG 2001 201 sorry, which showed that high doses of the MIR29 mimic could reduce fibrosis. The dosage used in the study was much too high to give to most to human patients. But the work was promising evidence for Yale and me, Reagan Therapeutics, now Vidian Therapeutics, to establish an NIH NHLBI funded collaboration to develop microRNA mimics as IPF therapeutics. MicroRNA mimic reduces fibrosis in various settings. In their latest study, the team created their new and improved MRG 229 molecule. They chemically modified the molecule to make it more stable and added a peptide that allowed for more targeted delivery. Using multiple models, the team then studied their latest microRNA mimic uh, ability to reduce fibrosis. First, they showed that MRG 229 decreased fibrosis in cultured human lung fibroblast. Next, they tested the molecule in mouse models. These models revealed that not only did MRG 229 show antifibrotic activity but could also be administered at a dose barely one tenth of the strength of the original MRG 201. They also found that in addition to being delivered to intravenously, MRG 229 could be administered subcutaneously under the skin, which is less risky for patients, and that it could be given effectively at a low frequency that MRG 201. With this model, we started to see MRG 229 as a viable option for trials in humans, says Kaminsky. Finally, they tested their molecule in human lung segments to better understand its efficiency in human tissue. We took human lungs, cut them very thinly, and cultured them, and then caused scaring in them. Okay, says Kaminsky. Once again, MRG 229 was successful in reducing fibrosis. We proved in multiple models in vivo, ex vivo, and in vitro that through using a microRNA mimic, we could reverse fibrosis, he says. After finding promising results across several models, the team next ran several toxicological studies in rats and non-human primates to assess the molecule safety as a potential therapeutic. They found that MRG229 was tolerated, didn't create any adverse effects. Furthermore, they studied two cohorts of IPF patients to determine the best candidates for a new therapeutic in collaboration with Gisley Jenkins National Heart and Lung Institute, Imperial College London, UK, and Joe's Hadiso University of South Florida, Tampa, Florida, US. They tested blood levels of MIR-29 and found that low levels of MIR-29 were correlated with an increased risk of mortality. This finding is important for guiding researchers to patients who should get this drug in the future, says Kaminsky, a promising new therapeutic for IPF. Kaminsky feels that his team work is powerful evidence in support of MRG229 as a therapeutic. Our study is unique because we incorporated the concept of triangulation, in which we tested three models in vitro, ex vivo, and in vivo. He says, we do a lot of exciting research where we discovered a lot of things, but rarely do we make something in a way that would be attractive for someone to actually do the next step and test it in humans. Today, the treatment option for IPF are scarce. One of the problems with many of the drugs that we give is that they are supposed to work in the lung, but they actually hit every cell in the body. He says it makes patients feel sick and many stop taking the drug because they never feel better. So all the current therapies improve the lung, they don't improve a patient well-being. Being MRG 2029 is designed with a targeting receptor to limit its impact outside the lung and was shown to be safe and effective in animals. And the team is hopeful that the molecule will be tolerable in human patients. MRG 229 is approaching the end of the preclinical stage of drug development. It will need to be formulated for humans and then tested extensively, first for safety, then for efficiency in human clinical trials before it can be approved for use in patients, says Rusty Montgomery, PhD, a corresponding author on the paper and one of the original developers of the drug. We hope that the publication of our work will reawaken interest in the potential clinical development of MIR 29 as a therapy in the lungs and possibly other organs, he says. Kaminsky added, I would think that with the recent success of RNA therapeutics such as the COVID-19 vaccine and the desperate unmet need for new therapies in IPF and out results, the clinical research community and industry should be excited to try to bring MIR 29 mimicry to humans. I really hope it happens. Moving on to our next topic. I will be back in a minute, guys. Welcome back, guys. Low income household more likely to have more power disconnected after hot summers. Low income homes in California are more likely to have their power disconnected about 2 to 3 months after days when the temperature exceeds 95 degrees Fahrenheit than they are at any other time of year. That's because that's when customers receive overdue notices for bills related to their utility using use during those hot days. The findings are from a new UCLA-led new study published in Nature Energy. For low-income household, having just one hot day during the August billing period can lead to an 1.2% increase in the chance of being disconnected in October, said Alan Berensa, a UCLA economist and lead author of the study. Low income households have unique difficulty adjusting to extreme heat events, higher energy uses, for example, from heavier use of air conditioning, leads to higher bills, which forces some families into difficult decisions. Paying energy bills might mean for fighting food or other necessities, but avoiding paying energy bills could mean that utilities are disconnected. At the same time, forcing the use of air conditioning during a heat wave could lead to heat related illness. And many low income homes in Southern California don't have air conditioning at all. According to Brookings Institution report, 20% of households in the state in this city in of Los Angeles lack air conditioning. We don't want to stop using energy because we need them to be adapting to protecting themselves. Benencia said, and we simultaneously want there to be little financial distress later on when they get their bill. For the study, researchers reviewed the account histories of 300,000 low income households between January 2012 and August 2017 using data from Southern California Edison, which serves more than 50 million Southern Californians. The study focused on families whose household income below 200% of the federal poverty level. The average summer electricity bill for household in the study was 101.66 cents, but researchers found that for each additional day with temperature of at least 95 degrees Fahrenheit, electricity bills increased by $1.60. For each subsequent days that the temperature exceeded 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the increase was $2.92 per day. Those increases could easily add up to an additional $20 to $30 bill per bill. That might not seem like a dramatic increase for some Californians, but for the low income families, the additional expense can be devastating. Wade study suggested that between 60% and 70% of Americans in 2022 are living paycheck to paycheck, which can make it impossible to cope with unexpected expenses. Berencia said the study was intended to examine how climate change might make that problem even worse as the number of high temperature days increases. By the last 2 decades of the 21st century, if today's climate projection hold true, the study estimates low-income households would have a 12% greater risk than they do not do today for having their power disconnected. Public policy a solution that could help address the problem will be complex, Berencia said. For example, policies could be enacted that require landlords to provide air conditioning for their tenants and that mandate better insulation when homes are built or renovated. Other approaches could include providing subsidies to low income households to defray costs they incurred on extreme heat days or tailoring utility companies' existing financial assistance programs to provide extra funding after hot weather events. Badencia said, the benefit we will have in terms of avoiding financial distress and having people protect themselves vastly outweigh any small increase in energy consumption, Badencia said. Especially for this population, energy consumption is inelastic. It is a necessity. Of course, man, of course. He added that beyond the day to day financial challenges it can cause, being disconnected by utility providers can have lingering effects ranging from psychological distress to reduced credit scores, health implications, and perpetuations of poverty. So these are the study given by our on this. I mean, yep, man, great, man, great. Moving on to our next topic, clean hydrogen fuel is easier to produce from seawater with stable hierarchical electrocatalyst. Seawater, which comprises more than 95% of the Earth's water, could become our key source in the substantial production of clean hydrogen fuel with use of water splitting catalyst developed by Koch-led steam. Water splitting could offer an appealing way to carbon neutrality, especially when coupled with renewable energy sources such as solar and wind power. Water splitting involves the breakdown of water in an electrochemical cell to produce hydrogen at the cathode while generating oxygen at the anode under applied voltage. Yet, hydrogen and oxygen evolution catalysts that perform well in fresh water become less effective in seawater because of abductant ions that can promote unwanted reaction and poison catalysts. High corrosive chloride ions present in seawater undergo complex reactions that compete with oxygen evolution and generate harmful compounds such as hypochlorite because hydrogen production hinges on stable and efficient reaction at both electrodes. These ions are a major challenge for seawater splitting. Chemist Huiyan Zhang explained that hyperchlorite formation can occur because it demands a lower operational voltage to meet industrial needs than the oxygen evolution reaction. One way to tackle this issue is to design selective anode catalysts with lower voltage requirements. A nickel idiom monolayered anode catalyst should enhance performance and stability in seawater thanks to synergistic effects between its metal components. Okay, sorry man, sorry. Zhang team devised an approach that provides high efficiency and stable hydrogen evolution electrocatalyst for seawater splitting. The researcher created tiny cubic reactors in which the catalyst was encased in a molybdenum sulfide and protective shells. The catalyst core consisted of a carbon supported molybdenum based redox active compound and featured a zeolite like ordered nanopolar structure. Using a metal organic framework based approach, the researcher combined a metal complex precursor with the linker amido- imidazole in the presence of the surfactant to generate zeolite linked zinc molybdenum cubes. The resulting structure with the thioacetamide in ethanol under reflux to form a cubic molybdenum oxide phase confined in a thin zinc sulfide shell. Next, the chemically converted the cubic phase into the desired molybdenum sulfide encapsulated redox active compound at high temperature before selectively etching the zinc sulfide outer layer to yield the nanoreactors. The nanoreactor exhibited high electrocatalytic activity and stability in both fresh water and seawater. The remarkable activity and stability are attributed to their unique structure. Zhang says the core displayed numerous active sites that boosted hydrogen production, and the shell presented several defects within its layer, especially subnanometer size holes that allowed water molecule to permeate and access the internal active sites. Acting as a chain mail, the shell also blocked and prevented salts from depositing on the active sites. The hard alkali architecture of the nanoreactor isolates the electrolysis from side reaction. Similar to a smart house, the main reaction occurs in the rooms while side reaction happen in the backyard. Zhang says. The finding of published in CHEM catalysis. The researchers are now designing advanced catalysts with specific configuration to achieve a more sustainable energy conversion during seawater splitting. They are also investigating the structural evolution and behavior of the reactive center during catalytic process to gain in-depth knowledge of the seawater splitting technique for future advancement and mass commercialization. Moving on towards next topic, are insects doomed? New study showed added threat of climate change. Let's see. I mean, it's a study given by our more likely research on this topic. So, yep, let's see. The swing in temperature that un- accompany global warming could spell trouble for insect populations the world relies on for pollination and food production. A paper led by Northeastern doctoral student Kate Duffy and published in the October edition of Nature Climate Change uses data scientists show that in addition to rising temperature, fluctuation in temperature increases the risk of insects extinction in the decades ahead. Of the 38 insect species studied in the research led by Duffy, nearly all were at risk of being wiped out some point between 2050 and 2100. We found that there are an increasing number of events where the population crash to zero under future climate simulation, says Duffy, who in August obtained her PhD in interdisciplinary engineering from Northeastern Sustainability and Data Sciences Laboratory in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department. She says catastrophic events are represent conditions that are too hot or too cold for insects, which being cold blooded cannot regenerate their own form of internal blast. Insect population collapse would devastate the food chain and sanitation, which depends on insect for cross pollination and waste disposal, says Rup Ganguly, a northeastern professor and director of the HDS lab and Kate dissertation advisor. They fill so many critical ecosystem niches, Duffy says. Duffy paper to which Northeastern ecology and complexity researcher Tarek Goyard contributed combines data from field studies of insect population growth and the latest generation of Earth system models. The study determines mathematically and statistically what is expected to happen at insect population around the world during a time of high greenhouse gas emissions. This ability to generate insight of connecting across disparate scales from global climate or Earth system models to laboratory and field studies in something that goes to be the heart of adaptation sciences. This is something incredibly interesting, Ganguly says. Previously, research has focused on the environmental impacts of rising temperature, he says. Now we are saying it's not just that. There's need to look more at the fluctuation and say how to then maintain ecosystem, ensure ecosystem, services and ways to preserve and restore inspect insect populations. Ganguly says. The risk is higher for insect population in temperature region such as the continental US. According to the study, there's been a kind of a debate in the literature about whether tropical or temperature insects are more at risk for climate change deficits. Our finding is that temperature species are more at risk, she says. Ganguly, whose lab has reported on finding that temperature fluctuations are a part of global warming, says the swings of temperature may be larger in temperature zones. The thermostat that accompanies climate change wasn't an across the board bad thing for bugs. DFE research on dynamic growth in insect population found 16 of 38 insect species study experienced a significant increase in stability, while the stability of 10 declined. But the finding that nearly all 38 population are at risk of collapse in the years are to come is not a contradiction, Duffy says. We thought a lot about this when interpreting results, she says. We found that the two findings were not actually at odds. The population could become larger on average over time, but one extreme event could cause the population to dip to zero. DOFs used data from field studies of biting insects such as horse flies and crop pest parasites because those are the insect scientists have previously studied for their impact of on human populations, but don't think their disappearance would benefit the planet. Ganguly says in addition to their being stand-ins for more overtly beneficial insects, even pesky insects are important for our ecology, she says. Duffy and Ganguly say the paper is a starting point for more detailed study that incorporate additional and environmental factors such as precipitation, relative humidity, and wind patterns. All of this could be important, says Ganguly, who is he's also chief scientist in advanced computing mathematics and data division at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. This is not the final study that will be done on this topic, he says. This is a starting point. I count myself lucky that we have a professor go here as a long time collaborator with whom we have a co-authored other paper in related areas, including one in the journal Nature. In editorial note, the director of the Nature Climate Change says that climate change ecology has larger focus on the impacts of temperature increase on organism survival. The work of DOP and colleagues instead investigated temperature variability and understudy impact, which has been proposed as an even greater risk to species. Their work highlights the importance of going beyond species survival projects that focus on static minimum, maximum on average temperature values. The editors says defeated the bulk of work on the study while a doctoral student in Ganguly SDS lab. Duffy said our research paper was very exploratory in its path when we started it. I don't think any of us knew exactly where we were going with it. There are still a lot of questions left to be unanswered. She says it would be really exciting to bring the dynamical modeling together somehow with models that can account for different ecological factors such as species interaction and different climate factors beyond just temperature. Even if greenhouse gas emission micro- miraculously stopped overnight, some of the environmental impact on insect population will remain, Ganguly says. He said that even as he acknowledges the danger posed by the risk of extinction, he is not pessimistic. Ecosystem managers can explore ways to preserve and enhance biodiversity, perhaps by introducing certain species to new environments. Ganglu says what this immediately calls for is a comprehensive resilience approach for climate stress ecosystem, especially a more well-designed and informed strategy for preservation and restoration, given our finding that temperature fluctuation are also important. He says, of course, man, of course. So, I mean, it's the researcher provide the advantage and disadvantage of the doomed insects all around the world, and how it is being very cautious for our human health, and especially used for the ecosystem as well as so. Oh, I mean, great man, great things. Okay, moving on to our next topic. Machine learning facilitates turbulence tracking in fusion reactors. Fusion, which promises practically unlimited carbon free energy using the space processor that power the sun, is at the heart of a worldwide research effort that could help mitigate climate change. A multidisciplinary team of researchers is now bringing tools and insight from machine learning to aid this effort. Scientists from MIT and elsewhere have used computer vision models to identify and track turbulent structures that appeared under the condition needed to facilitate fusion reactions. Monitoring the formation and movement of these structures, called filaments or blobs, is important for understanding the heat and particle flows exciting from the reacting fuel, which ultimately determines the engineering requirements for the reactor wall to meet those flows. However, scientists typically study blobs using averaging techniques which trade details of individual structure in favor of aggregate statistics. Individual blob information must be tracked by marking them manually in video data. The researcher built a synthetic video dataset of plasma turbulence to make this process more effective and efficient. They used it to train four computer vision models, each of which identifies and tracks blobs. They trained the model to pinpoint blobs in the same way that humans would. When the researcher tested the trained models using real video clips, the models could identify blobs with high accuracy, more than 80% and more. In some cases, the models were also able to effectively estimate the size of blobs, the speed at which they moved. Because millions of video frames are captured during just one fusion experiment, using machine learning model to track blobs could give scientists much more detailed information. Before we could get a microscopic picture of what these structures are doing on average. Now we have a microscope and the computational power to analyze one event at a time. If we take a step back, what this reveals is the power available from this machine learning techniques, and we used to use this computational resources to make progress, says Theodore Golfino Polonius, a research scientist at the MIT Plasma Science and Fusion Center and co-author of a paper detailing these approaches. His fellow co-author included lead author Wang Yung Harry Han, a physics PhD candidate, senior author Idiot Rory, a visiting professor in the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, Cecil, faculty associate professor at Boston University, and adjunct at Columbia University as well as others from the MIT Plasma Science and Fusion Center, the MIT Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, and the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology at Lausanne in Switzerland. The research appears today in scientific reports, heating things up for more than 70 years. Scientists have sought to use control thermonuclear fusion reaction to develop an energy source. To reach the condition necessary for a fusion reaction, fuel must be heated to temperature above 100 million degrees Celsius. The core of the sun is about 50 million degrees Celsius. A common method by containing this super hot fuel called plasma is to use a tokamak. These devices utilize extremely powerful magnetic field to hold the plasma in place and control the interaction between the exhaust heat from the plasma and the reactor walls. However, blobs appear like filaments falling out of plasma at the very edge between the plasma and the reactor walls. These random turbulent structure affect how energy flows between the plasma and the reactor. Knowing what or not the blobs are doing strongly constrained the, the engineering performance that your tokamak power plant need at the edge adds glun film flows. Researchers use a unique imaging technique to capture video of the plasma turbulent edge during experiments. An experimental campaign may last months. A typical day will produce about 30 seconds per of data, corresponding to roughly 60 million video frames, with thousands of blobs approaching each second. This makes it impossible to track all blobs manually, so researchers rely on average sampling technique that only provide broad characteristics of blob size, speed, and frequency. On the other hand, machine learning provides a solution to this by blob tracking for every frame, not just average quantities. This gives us much more knowledge about what it is happening at the boundary of the plasma, Han says. He and his co-author took four well established computer vision models which are commonly used for applications like autonomous driving and trained them to tackle this problem, simulating blob. To train these models, they created a vast dataset of synthetic video clips. They captured the blob random and unpredictable nature. Sometimes they change direction or speed, sometimes multiple blob merge or they split apart. These kinds of events were not considered before with traditional approaches, but we could freely simulate those behavior in the synthetic data. Han says. Creating synthetic data also allowed them to label each blob, which made the training process more effective. Draw reacts. Using this synthetic data, they trained the model to draw boundaries around blobs, teaching them to closely mimic and what a human scientist would draw. Then they tested the model using real video data from experiment first. They measured how closely the boundaries the model drew matched up with the expert blob counters, but they also wanted to see if the models predicted objects that humans would identify. They asked three human experts to pinpoint the center of blobs in video frames, check to see if if the model predicted blobs in those same locations. These models were able to draw accurate blob boundaries overlapping with brightness counters, which are considered ground truth about 80% of the time. Their evolutions were similar to those of human experts and successfully predicted the theory defined regime of the blob, which agrees with the result from a traditional method. Sorry. Now that they are shown the success of using synthetic data and computer vision models for tracking blobs, the researchers plan to apply this technique to other plasma infusion research such as estimating particle transport at the boundary of a plasma. Hence, they also made the dataset models publicly available and look forward for seeing how other research groups applied these tools to study the dynamics of blobs, says Drody. Prior to this, there was a barrier to entry that mostly the only people working on this problem were physicists who had the dataset and were using their methods. There is a huge machine learning and computer vision community. One goal of the work is to encourage participation and fusion research from the broader machine learning community toward the broader goal of helping solve the critical problem of climate change, he adds. So these are the studies, these are the findings on the machine learning facilitate turbulence. I know, uh, and it's the end of this podcast. I know many of you thinking that I have given you the statement that we have been doing a structure, but I mean, me and my one member of group not able to provide you the more detailed way. So it's a request to you guys to subscribe to this newsletter. Otherwise, it's being very difficult for us to run this sustain this model. So it's a request. Otherwise, it's your choice, of course. At the end, I just want to say, you guys keep researching, stay curious, stay healthy.